Hi, everyone. Welcome to another interview for our Sustainable Finance Toolkit. I'm really excited to have Kelly here. Kelly's a good friend of mine and a classmate. We met at a program at Harvard, and he's really excited to tell you a little bit about his career path and the exciting job opportunities there are in the space of sustainable finance. Kelly, I'd love to hear a little bit about who you are and what got you to this place. Why were you interested in adding sustainability to your career and to complement what you already know about finance?
Okay. Hi, Stephen. Thanks for having me. Well, I like finance, and I've always been somebody who's been very concerned about the environment and what we're doing to the planet since I was a kid, really. So this kind of like marries everything. And I was really super interested in it, particularly in renewables, back when I started in finance back in 2007. I started at JP Morgan Chase right before the big crash. I was on Wall Street. And so I went through the major catastrophe with the mortgages. From JP Morgan, I went over to HSBC. Then I went back to JP Morgan, and then I decided to go back. But throughout that whole time period, I was always trying to push sustainable finance, but it was really almost impossible to get anybody to talk about it, talk about renewables, understand why. They either didn't want to hear it, or when they heard it, they're like, but it's more expensive. Why should I do this? It was not an easy conversation. It was basically like pulling teeth. There were very few people that were even vaguely interested in it. So after all of the crashes, because the financial markets were a mess, I decided I needed to beef up my background. So I ended up getting an MBA and a master's of finance at Holt. I wanted to go into sustainable finance, but things changed in the US and the job market pretty much dried up by the time I graduated. So I started looking for something else, and I found this program at Harvard. And I had looked at Oxford, I'd looked everywhere, but I needed to be somewhere where I was working too, because I just finished, 2 master's degrees, but I needed something more to be able to push me over the edge. So I enrolled in the program at Harvard, which is where I met Stephen. And the thing about it is that Harvard, because this industry is new, and it's new in the US, but it's also really new globally. There's not a whole lot of people out there that know what they're talking about, or even they're not sure they understand what they're talking about. So if you go to a program like the one at Harvard or at Oxford or at Cambridge or any of the universities that are pretty well known, that are actually trying to pioneer programs like this and really get involved, that often the governments go and ask them, how do we form regulations? Mm-hmm. Like the head of the program at Oxford, Ben Caldecott, is on the GTAG task force that's actually advising the UK how to form their taxonomy around green finance, bonds, loans, and everything. So even the governments are going to the universities. This gives you credibility in the space. This space is fascinating because it's changing constantly. But having a traditional finance background is a super big compliment to it, because you still need to understand how the capital markets work. You have to understand credit. You have to understand, just basic corporate structures and, how things work to be able to understand. Because what you need to do in sustainable finance is to get people interested. It's not that hard anymore. They're starting to get it. But as soon as you link the financial materiality to sustainability, that's when everything changes. Mm-hmm. Then they start to understand that, well, wait a second, there's money. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's an estimated in the Wall Street Journal the other day, JP Morgan actually told the Wall Street Journal there's $7.3 trillion in sustainable finance. 80% of that money is in Europe, mm-hmm. because they're ahead of the game. So there is an awful lot of money here, there's an awful lot of money in the US to be made, and just globally, that's really not being tapped. Right now, Europe's getting the bulk of it, mm-hmm. because they're so much further ahead. Mm-hmm. And even if you listen to what the UK is trying to do, they're trying to take the EU taxonomy and build off of that and make theirs more robust and more solid, because everybody wants to try to be a leader. The US, I think we're supposedly coming out with something in, I think it's going to be November right now, is what the SEC is saying. But nobody really knows what it is. We know very little about what's going to come out. We don't know what direction it's going to be. So, a lot of it still remains to be unseen. The other thing that's amazing about the space job-wise is there's pretty much no one out there that has a real force that's doing it. There's a big lack of talent in this area. So if you're interested in it and you have some credibility behind your name and you know finance, they're going to probably interview you. Because there really aren't a whole lot of people out there that understand this.
Yeah.
And yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, that's been my impression as well, is that there is a lot of opportunity for people to get into this space because it's so new. There's all of these traditional banks and asset managers and asset owners who are trying to add sustainability to their portfolio, whether to talk about it to attract clients or to be able to talk the talk to say, like, this is how we're managing our money. And so having programs like you just mentioned from all over the world that add sustainability to your resume definitely add to the value that you can bring to these organizations. So you've been interviewing at a ton of places. You've told me this. Like, what has been that experience been like for you?
A lot of the interviews have been, it's a lot of fun when you get somebody who's passionate about it, like I am. I mean, this is what's exciting about it. When you get those of us together that understand this stuff, we can talk about it for hours on end and keep going and talk real fast. And when you're actually with like-minded people that actually see the vision of where this can go, it's amazing. A lot of times you'll be in interviews, particularly with the HR people, and they don't really know what they're looking for, because most of them will tell you they've never hired for these types of positions. So they really don't know, which brings me back to what I was saying about the programs and the credibility. When you have something on your resume behind your name with this that lends credibility, this is when the recruiters are going to reach out to you. They're going to see that and be like, wait a second, Cambridge, sustainability, okay, Oxford, Harvard, NYU, UPenn, whatever.
Right.
I'm naming top schools here because, top schools will always get it. But, even a top school, you're probably, even as if you're in sustainability and you're looking in sustainable finance, I guarantee you they'll probably call you before they're going to call the Harvard MBA.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd agree with that.
The Harvard MBA is going to know some of it, but not to the level that you will.
Yeah. And knowing the talk, like how you were saying, being able to converse these things, which is so, like, there's so many terms, there's such a lexicon, there's like a whole alphabet soup when it comes to the reporting standards that are out there, to the mini taxonomies that are developing here in the United States, the UK, Europe, and not to mention Asia as well. This whole space, there's like a lot to understand. So it's like really important going into that to be able to develop your skill set and your conversational skills around the topic. Like, what has that been like? Have you like been able to find those resources, or how do you like know what to talk about?
I mean, a lot of it, to be honest with you, I literally fall back on what I'm learning at Harvard all the time. Yeah. I pull stuff from Oxford. I look up the people. I referenced Ben Caldecott earlier because I like the way he talks about sustainability. I read stuff by him when he puts it out. You can look up papers. George Serafine from Harvard is another one. Look at the examples of companies like BNP Paribas is probably the #1 bank for sustainable finance in the world. But when you talk to them, they will even tell you, and this is important to know when you go into these interviews, the biggest challenge even they have, and that every financial institution is going to have, is to retraining their workforce. Because it's very easy to find people like us that have the traditional financial background. It's very difficult to find people like us with the traditional finance background, but also with the sustainability aspect. That's what they have to do, because the sustainability aspect means you have to start thinking differently.
Totally. And I think that's what's really encouraging for students who are getting into this space, or someone who might not have like the traditional finance background, is you can become a subject matter expert within a specific field, whether it's blue carbon, whether it's blue energy or carbon, or thinking about conservation, or, we were talking about social issues as well. That's can be your door to being able to have the talk and getting in and showing that these things.
Right. Because I mean, most firms, banks, institutions, asset managers have proprietary financial models that they use. You're not developing the model, you're not creating it. They already have them. That part, I think, is a lot easier to learn. I think it's a lot harder for them to teach the sustainability aspect to their people.
Yeah.
And this is where you come in. So you're probably not going to enter into lower level positions. It's probably, most of them out there seem to be higher. Or you're at least going to be in extremely visible roles.
Yes.
If you talk to the recruiters like ACRA, ACRE, which is a sustainable recruiting firm out of Europe, they're also in the US. They will tell you when they're interviewing, your visibility is like 2 people reporting from the CEO. That doesn't mean you're going to be a director or a partner, but you're that close to the CEO because there are that few people in the organizations. And a lot of these firms are really big names. If I named them, you would know them, but they're all at the level of BNP Paribas.
Yeah.
So these aren't small players.
No, not at all. And I like the thing that I've heard from other people, and we've talked about this as well, is like how they're putting out job descriptions for what they ideally want, knowing that they're not going to find a candidate that fits every single bucket on that piece of paper. They're trying to hire somebody that will be there 5 years from now, right? The kind of quality of the talent pool that is out there maybe has 1-2 years of the necessary requirements to get into this role. It's growing, right?
Yeah, but I don't think anybody's got it. When, traditionally when they put out for a director or a VP, they say what, 8 years experience? No one has 8 years sustainable finance experience because nobody was doing it.
Yeah.
That already, when you read that, it's like, that's impossible. You can't find that. And what it is they're copying what's traditional and they're throwing in words, and they've realized that they're not going to find a director that has 8 years of sustainable finance experience. So, the thing, you can get in. I mean, they're as long as you have something or you can talk about it. And even if you tell them it's mostly academic, you know what they're going to tell you? That's fine. They're not going to be upset by that, because I think a lot of them are starting to realize that they know they don't know a lot.
Yeah. And to your point earlier about how the academics are influencing the market tremendously, right? That's something that's really cool. And what we really value about this toolkit is that it's a way for the market to have access to the students, the researchers, the PhDs, the teachers who are doing this stuff and like proving how valuable sustainable finance is, whether it's from an impact perspective or from a money-making perspective, right? The research is out there and being done to answer those questions. So how do you integrate it into the business? Well, you go to the researchers who are the ones who are telling you how to do this.
Yeah. And, it's somewhat easier now to have to show them financial materiality, thanks to, frankly, Europe. Because Europe's firms have been on this road for longer. So they actually have the data for the past 5 years to say, look, we started doing this and look what happened to our margins went up. We're making more money in this area and we have less risk. And the ones that have done it correctly, they're ahead of the game. They're even ahead of the regulations, which anybody in this industry can tell you, if you're in finance at all, you don't want to be playing catch up to regulations because that's going to cost you a fortune.
Yeah.
It's an absolute nightmare. If you're ahead of them, you're in a much better position, and then others will follow you. And that also means that customers are going to go to where? You.
Hmm. Yeah.
I use this as an example all the time. JetBlue, back before the pandemic, so we're talking what, 2019,
Hmm.
opened up a sustainability linked line of credit with BNP Paribas, and they didn't even fly to Europe. But yet they're using a French bank because they were one of the only banks that were capable of doing that type of finance.
Hmm.
Why? Because they've been at it for 14 years, by accident. If you listen to Hervé Duteuil, who's the head of the North American sustainability operations for the bank, I heard him at a conference and he said, we didn't get into it planned. He's like, banks don't do stuff if it's not going to make money.
Hmm.
He's like, we noticed that we had 5 people playing around with this, making some money off of it. And he said, before we knew it, we turned around, there were 300 people in Paris and they were all making money. So we formed a division.
Hmm.
And he said, and that's what basically happened. He said it was not a strategy set out. It has since morphed into their 5 pillars for the whole bank.
Hmm.
And all of this is public knowledge. So, I mean, all you have to do is go look on their website and see what they've done. And it's pretty impressive that it's an actual bank.
Hmm.
And they aren't the only examples. You've got Rabobank that has a circular economy desk in Holland. They're actually, and they're doing it by working with academia. And a lot, like I said, none of these people have been doing this for decades.
Hmm.
It hasn't been around.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's a groundswell happening where many people around the world are realizing how important these changes are, from adopting a circular economy, thinking about how we do an energy transition, to talking about climate justice and diversity and social issues as well. Like this is all, like, the awareness is happening. And to keep up with where the market is going, these firms, these old, guys have to start adopting and changing. So it's a really good opportunity to be in this space now. Kelly, how would you inspire us? What would be something that you could leave us with, or to motivate us as we go on our paths within this space?
I would just tell you, go out there and look at what's happening in this area. Take a look pick a company that you're interested in, that is doing well sustainably. That's a public company, preferably, because it's easier to look at. Take a look at what they're doing. And when you see one of their sustainability reports, it's not going to be, you don't have to read it. If it's a good one, it's done correctly. They'll show you in the past 5 years the progress they've made. And you look at their 10K and look how much money they've made. All of a sudden, you start realizing the possibilities here. It is possible to do good and make money. After the 2008 crash, and I bring that up again because I went through it, it went from where bankers and people in banking and financial institutions were revered and looked up to as examples, to where you would go. I remember going to parties and none of us wanted to say what we did. Because if you told him you worked for JP Morgan or HSBC, everybody would stare at you. I remember being back in Paris with friends and family and, with them, and they're like, oh, what do you do for work? And one of my friends, Natalie, she goes, oh, don't ask him that. That's mean. Because it was not going to be a well-received response. Because they looked at finance as causing all of this.
Yeah.
Now, finance is in a position to do the opposite. Look what happened to Exxon. Whoever thought that BlackRock, the largest asset management firm in the world, was going to go to one of the largest oil companies and say, you are putting these activists, environmentalists on the board, or else.
Yeah. The case of
That's power.
Yeah, really great case to look at of how activism works within this and the power large institutions can have.
Because if BlackRock were to pull their money out of Exxon,
Yeah.
I guarantee you the stock would crash.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's pressure there too, right? Because BlackRock has made these promotions, Larry Fink has made a commitment, and there's time to see action there. So, walking the line, you've got to start stepping up and moving the needle here.
I have a friend that calls it finance with a conscience. And I like to say it's finance as a force for good. And that's really what sustainability is. Sustainable finance is so important in moving us to a better world, better lives, and a better social environment. Our quality of life will get better with this. And sustainable finance has to be a part of that, or it won't work.
Yeah.
And I think people are starting to realize that. You look at all the studies out there, none of this is about millennials, and everybody says, and I'm kind of this way too, I don't want to work for a company that doesn't have a good value system.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, who wants to work for a company that might be using child labor or this or that? Nobody.
Yeah. Yeah. The awareness has completely changed, where we recognize these large institutions have done so much damage that we don't want to be a part of them. And if the system doesn't change, and that's what my hope is that sustainable finance helps the system to change. The system will have to, otherwise it's not working, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, it is changing. I mean, look at what Shell's doing.
Yeah.
Look at what BP's doing. And I'm picking the oil companies because I gave Exxon as being forced. But I mean, they also were somewhat forced. I mean, the Dutch court system gave Shell a mandate. That's it. You're doing this or else. But, they can become energy companies. Just because it's an oil company doesn't mean it's bad.
Yeah. And Shell is making huge investments into how do we revolutionize our city space? How do we develop our whole communities in better ways? So yeah, there's a role that these large institutions that have a debt to pay can help us to do that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, BP, after everybody remembers when you think of the oil spill, everybody remembers what happened. It was an utter disaster. But they've actually done a lot in this area, to advance, to become an energy company. They're trying.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, this isn't flipping a switch. They need help. And this is where sustainable finance can help. I'm not advocating, and most people in sustainable finance and banks don't want you to do this either, are telling you this exclusionary, if it's an oil company, just don't give them any money. That's ridiculous. You have to help them change. Everybody has to change. Each country has to change. Not everywhere is like Europe, where everything is much more sustainable. The US has a lot of work to do. Everybody's at different levels, and every company is going to be at a different level. Not every airline is JetBlue.
Right.
I mean, even Air France got slammed for not having a real strategy and for having band-aids, by BNP Paribas. They're like, carbon offsets in new aircraft is not a sustainability strategy.
Totally. Kelly, I think this is a really great place to leave it, because you've hit on how much growth that there will be in this space. And it's a really big opportunity for people like us who are willing to take that leap and add sustainability into our careers, right? Willing to take that risk.
Definitely.
How would you like to end the conversation? What would you like to say last?
I'm just going to tell you, just don't give up on it. And yeah, it might be frustrating initially, because as much as these companies need help, they also don't know what they're looking for. So there's no magic mix, and there's no quick way to do it. I would just tell you, keep plugging away. If you're interested in this, you will reap rewards, and you will be in a much better place than most people coming out of this. And you'll do good at the same time.
Yeah.
So you want to feel good about yourself, this is a good way to do it, and make a lot of money in the process.
Hey, I am all for the doing good, Kelly. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having the conversation with me.
Thanks.
Take care.
Bye, guys.